None of these other friends of Syria, and here I must parenthesize, I have a very, very good memory. I never forget anything. Sometimes it's a curse. This started life as Friends of Democratic Syria. It's very important to remember that. Mrs. Clinton announced it as Friends of Democratic Syria until they realized the absolute absurdity, even on Fox News, of Saudi Arabia and Qatar being the main funders of the Friends of Democratic Syria. I mean, only a lunatic could accept that Saudi Arabia, in which no democracy of any kind is permitted, and anyone asking for it will either be killed or hanged upside down and tortured in the dungeons for it, could conceivably be interested in democracy in Syria. Hence it metamorphosed into Friends of Syria. And as everyone here has already adumbrated, there is no sense in which these people are truly, genuinely friends of Syria. The Syrian regime is as has been characterized here, but it's not being subverted, invaded, and being brought down, if possible, because it's undemocratic. How could that be? When our best friends in the region are the absolute antithesis of democracy. It's not because human rights in Syria are bad, because human rights in all these dictatorships are bad, and in some of them even worse than in Syria. Because there's one family rule in Syria. How could it be? What's the name of the rulers of Saudi Arabia? They've even given their name to the country itself. The Prime Minister of Bahrain has been the Prime Minister since 1960, before the Beatles. And the Beatles have been gone 40 years. He's been the Prime Minister from 1960 to 2012. And how did he get that job? Because he's a member of the one family rule dictatorship in Bahrain. I drew attention, I recall, to an early day motion which I was able to verbally put to Douglas Hurd during the 1991 war against Iraq, to the fact that all 27 cabinet members in Kuwait all had the same name, Al-Sabah.
After graduation, we both went abroad. I went to Egypt, and he went to Afghanistan and then Libya. That's where he was imprisoned for 41 days while covering the 2011 Libyan revolution. There was a massive campaign waged to bring Jim home, and the good news was that it worked, and he did make it home. He went back to Northwestern to speak, and I got a chance to see my friend again for what I didn't know then would be the last time. We were all excited to catch up, and he told me of his plans to go to Syria, where the situation was escalating. It was dangerous, especially for foreign journalists who were banned from covering Syria by Syrian President Bashar Assad. But Jim wanted to speak to the people. He wanted to be there so we could get a sense of what's really going on. Despite this ongoing media blackout, what we do know is that the Syrian civil war may be the worst humanitarian crisis so far this century. According to the UN, it's left more than 170,000 people dead and has displaced 9 million civilians. In the wake of Jim's death, I've been reflecting on all of this. But one question still stays with me. What created the conditions on the ground for this kind of fanaticism to flourish? What role do we as Americans play in all of this? Our whole post-World War II politics point to examples of us supporting extremists, starting with Roosevelt backing Saudi King Ibn Saud. Then there was also the Mujahideen in Afghanistan in the 80s, and more recently, the support of jihadists in Syria, which have captured parts of Iraq. Two of our most important allies in the region, Saudi Arabia and Qatar, have used jihadist groups as centerpieces of their own foreign policy. It's been reported repeatedly that both countries have provided arms directly to extremists. And there are reports like this one from the New York Times, which expose how the CIA played an instrumental role in shopping for weapons and choosing which rebel groups would get them. We opened up a Pandora's box in the Middle East with the invasion of Iraq in 2003, followed with the years of ongoing sectarian violence, which has left 500,000 people dead from war-related causes, according to a recent study. The U.S. has invaded and supported the overthrow of governments, which tilled the soil for fanaticism. After creating this power vacuum, groups like the Islamic State have risen to fill it. And that's the part of the story that needs to be told. Jim was chasing that story, and many others like it when he headed to Syria. He wanted to bear witness to this destruction and share with the world the Syrian people's stories. He can tell you the reason why he chose to go better than anyone else can. So here's Jim, in his own words, at Medill in 2011.
Pointing out that Kuwait is a family business, though more of the Corleone variety than the Sainsbury family business. The idea that Syria should be attacked, invaded, subject to humanitarian intervention because it has one family rule for 40 years, that can't be the reason either, can it? It can't be for any of these reasons, and it isn't. Here's the reason, and I repeat what Dr. Sami said. The reason is not for any of the bad things about Syria, of which there are many, but because Syria refuses to sign a surrender peace deal with Israel as the other frontline states have done. Because Syria refuses to cut its links with the Palestinian resistance and expel them, although they've all moved to Doha, I see in the last few weeks, some of them. All roads lead to Doha, even the World Cup. Well, perhaps better not go into how that came about. But perhaps it was for the same reasons.
Yeah.
The Syrians refuse to cut their relationship with the Palestinian revolution and its roots. They refuse to cut their relations with the Lebanese national resistance, the only Arab army which ever gave Israel a beating on the battlefield. And by the way, that also was one of the reasons I won in Bradford, because everybody's watched my Sky News interview at the height of the Lebanese war. It's a no-brainer. Syria's being targeted because it refuses to be a base for imperialism in the region, because it refuses to agree that Iran is the head of a snake that needs to be cut off and itself invaded and subverted. That's why Mrs. Clinton and William Hague hate Syria, or rather its regime. Now, Jeremy Paxman put to me last night, again, as if it were some kind of accusation, that I had described Syria as the last castle of Arab dignity. The reason why this plot has failed, and believe me, it has failed, is because the Syrian people, not their regime, in fact, the regime for 40 years has been play acting and betraying. The Syrian people are the last castle of Arab dignity. They are the last repository of Arab nationalism in the region and rejection of Zionist occupation and imperialist intrigue. And that's why I hope that the Syrian people can find their way to a peaceful and negotiated solution to this conflict. Assad must go. This is the end of the era of dictatorship in Syria. We cannot have one family, one party, one regime ruling forever in any Arab country. And we will not support it. But we will not support the bigger tyrants invading and intervening to bring down the small ones, because we believe, as real friends of Syria, that will lead to even more disaster than these dictatorships have caused. I just want to make one or two last points, if I may. The Muslim Brotherhood is not monolithic. It's not monolithic either in the world or even in any one country. And millions, hundreds actually of millions of people are sympathetic to the political perspectives of the Muslim Brotherhood. And what I'm about to say, just like Dr. Sami, is not in any way an attack on them. But I have to ask this Muslim Brotherhood leadership. There are many dictators. Why have you announced a jihad against the one Arab dictatorship that doesn't have an Israeli embassy, doesn't have the Mossad running around the capital city, hasn't signed a surrender peace with Israel, does the liberation of the Palestinian people with guns and money, does support the Lebanese national resistance. Why have you chosen that dictatorship for your jihad? Aren't there any dictatorships closer to hand that are more close to the line of treason that you might have a jihad against? And I said this to one of the leaders of the Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan. He said, we can't have a jihad in Jordan because it will bring about civil war. So you want a civil war in Syria, but you're not prepared to rise up against your own tyrant because you say the result will be civil war. There's no reason for a revolution to bring about civil war. These dictatorships, rotten as they are, if a united people rise up against them, can defeat them. But if your revolution is pregnant with sectarianism and hatred of minorities, as I believe certain sectors of this Syrian revolution are, how can you expect to unite the people? If the Christians are frightened of you, if the Shiites are frightened of you, if the Alawiyin are frightened of you, if the Kurds are frightened of you, if these are frightened of you, if the...
I talked to my mom once. I had one phone call, and that was all I was praying for. You know, Claire and I, all we were praying for was just let us talk to our moms. Just let our moms know. Sounds funny, but it's not. Just let our moms know that we're okay, that we're alive, that I'm okay. You know, physically I'm fine. I'm being fed. We were beaten once, tortured never. Physically I'm okay. There's some humanity in these guards. You know, the system is inhumane, but the humanity is in these people. We were in a general Libyan population, immediately embraced by Libyan political prisoners. They saw us as trying to tell their story. Immediately embraced by these Libyan political prisoners from age 24 to 50s, 60s, sending text messages, making jokes about Gaddafi, you know, real criminals, you know, waving the rebel flag. You know, amazing sense of community that literally helped us. But, you know, I talked to my mom on the phone. Not only did I call her, they let me call her, but she picked up the phone. You know, I only know one number, my family's phone number. My mom actually picked it up. You know, it was like, that was a miracle, man. That was God right there, you know. And that was the day before Easter. My mom's very Catholic. That meant a lot. I mean, a lot of my friends from Marquette are very Catholic, and you know, these guys were. I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea what people were doing for me. No idea. You know, you're in a cell. It's like you're a submarine. You know, you can only see out these bars. You know, and you're just trying to stay sane and through prayer and, you know, cigarettes basically. But you know, I said, Mom, can't you feel me praying to you that I'm okay? She said, Jim, can't you feel all your friends, all the people praying for you? You know, they're having prayer vigils at Marquette, you know. And I said, I guess I can. I guess I can feel that.
Women are frightened of you. How can you unite the people in a revolution? So correct your line, correct your rhetoric, correct your tactics, and maybe your revolution will be successful. I hope, very much hope, that the Kofi Annan plan of a negotiated transition to democracy in Syria can work. I believe that it can work. I believe that it will work. I believe that we will have democratic elections in Syria this year. But if I'm wrong, anybody who launches a united, progressive, democratic struggle against the Syrian regime will have my support. But they will never have my support for my country bombing their country like we bombed Iraq, Libya, and elsewhere. Wassalamu alaikum. Thank you.